All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We are recording on a Monday afternoon. Today, we're going to talk about the Seahawks and the Cardinals going in opposite directions in the NFC West. And then we will talk about the MVP markets in the NFL and NBA that both have minus money favorites now in Josh Allen and Nikola Jokic. But let's start off with the Seahawks, Drew, who are now minus 115 to win the NFC West, but they are 3-point dogs at home to the Packers on the Sunday night game on NBC. The total is 47 in that one. Do you think it is fair to rate the Seahawks as a kind of neutral average team as the market has been wont to do?
I do not. And what's notable to me is I'm high on the Packers and I still can't get anywhere close to 3 here. The market has been shy on the Seahawks for a while now. And I get it. The middle of the season, they banked some very poor outcomes. That was largely because the defense really was just broadly injured at the key positions at all 3 levels. And it was a defense that was building from scratch with Mike McDonald and was expected to take some time to get to sort of their final, the cake being finally baked. And even with those terrible games baked into their performance, this is still a top 10 defense over the balance of the season. In terms of EPA per play allowed. And then when you really dial into just how they've been playing recently, it's been excellent. And so I'm not exactly sure why this team is not getting more respect, because if the defense is going to play like they have been recently for the rest of this season, and the offense has consistent, repeatable, performance by quarterback Geno Smith, combined with outstanding emergence of JSN as a wide receiver, and DK Metcalf hasn't even really been healthy. They haven't even really had their full complement of weapons in the running game, as they've been going back and forth between Walker and Charbonnet here, and at some point, the offensive line is consistently getting less and less of a problem, which is, is a kind way of saying that they went from a very, very bad to just kind of middling. As long as they're playing a team that doesn't have an aggressively impressive pass rush, I'm not worried about this offense scoring points. And I'm now impressed by the way that the defense can bottle good offenses in the NFL. So I think it's fair to say that the Seahawks should be more like +1.5, +2. I've had them here for a while and been betting them every week. And I think that it's important to recognize that this is on the basis of they currently have, clearly, in my opinion, a top 10 a defense and an offense that is knocking on the door of the top 10. So I don't know that ultimately Seattle's position at the top of the NFC West is sustainable. It feels pretty tenuous considering how difficult their schedule is these next few weeks. The Seahawks-Rams Week 18, I think, will come down to deciding this division unless the Niners can play spoiler for the Rams this weekend. And I think Seahawks are probably going to be your 3 seed.
Okay. Who do you think has the better quarterback in this game?
Oh, boy. It's Jordan Love, and it's by a decent amount. And Jordan Love has a lower floor than Geno Smith, but a much higher ceiling. The degree to which Love has had inconsistency throughout the season, particularly at the early part of the season, where he was dealing with injuries, where, it was still a little bit of, he's still green, he's still growing, so I'm willing to give him plenty of grace for some of the underperformance that we've seen, some of the turnovers prone performances we've seen. But the highs for Love are very, very high. Smith, to me, on the other hand, is, he's not ever really going to threaten the top 5 of quarterbacks in the NFL. But he is very, very clearly always going to have a floor that keeps him, in the 15-16 range at worst when things are going poorly, and in the 9-10 range at best when things are going well. But that also kind of comes down to his wide receivers making plays, having a balanced, rushing attack and a little bit better pass protection. But Geno can absolutely make the throws along the sidelines, down the field, with the way that the Packers are currently rostered on defense and the injuries that they've sustained and their lack of ability to find a pass rush, I think he's going to cook on Sunday. And I think this is an opportunity for the Seahawks to sort of finally kind of proved the doubters wrong. I know they were dogs on the road last week against the Cardinals, and we're going to talk about the Cardinals in a minute. But this is a team that I think is people are going to one day wake up and be like, oh wait, we need to have a little bit more respect for these guys. And for me at least, it starts with the defense, because this is a Mike McDonald team, and the offense has sort of just a high enough floor to keep them in any game, even if the defense isn't.
Okay. Well, speaking about low floor, high ceiling quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, who was riding high at 6-4 and in the box seat to win the division, it has all come crashing down with these 2 losses to the Seahawks, both in which I thought he played terribly. Sandwiched around a loss to the Vikings, which was perfectly respectable. He played fine in that one, and they easily could have won if Jonathan Gannon had gone the Sean McVay route of going for the kill at the end instead of kicking a field goal to go up 6 and losing the game. But the Cardinals now plus 750 to win the NFC West, plus 650 to make the playoffs. My numbers on both of those are a lot longer because they've kind of gotten themselves screwed with the tiebreak situation now, particularly against the Seahawks. Do you think that the market has clearly downgraded Arizona, particularly coming off this Seahawks loss? Do you think that's a correct adjustment?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. This was a little bit of sort of market last stand, making the Cardinals small favorites against the Seahawks this week. And even though the box score and the final margin of victory was a little bit misleading, they still clearly lost. They had a couple of key turnovers in that game. They allowed, of course, the huge run to Zach Charbonnet that was pretty much the deciding play of the game. But this was still a pretty wild underperformance from the Cardinals team. And most of it kind of comes down to the fact that their defense really had no answers for the Seahawks passing game. And that's going to be a problem for a number of the quarterbacks that they face down the stretch here. And I think just in general, when you go from surprise leading your division and thinking about a playoff spot in the middle of November to now being clearly on the outside looking in, and just for context, my probability of the Cardinals making the playoffs is down to 6%. It can be deflating for a team, and particularly with a young coach and trying to get a culture installed in there. And the fact that 2 of the losses came at the hands of the Seahawks, where you were in coin flip games, and the other one was against the Vikings on the road, where you really should have won. That's got to be deflating. And you get the Patriots this week with a frisky Drake May coming off the bye. You get a completely resurgent Bryce Young in week 16, and then you got to finish against Stafford and Brock Purdy. Like, this kind of looks like you're gonna finish with 7 L's on the way in. I say 7. The Patriots obviously are huge dogs in this game. If they lose this game, then I think losing 7 in a row is in the cards. This is a pretty disappointing pivot for a team that not that long ago was about 40% to make the playoffs by my numbers. So can't feel good to be going through the film, particularly this week where you were the decided loser at home.
Indeed. All right. Well, let's jump to the MVP market, which will be the topic of much debate this week going into a blockbuster game in the context of the NFL season and also the MVP race when Joshua Allen goes into Detroit. It's a 2.5-point dog. He is now a minus 500 favorite to win MVP. Saquon Barkley is plus 350 after he broke the Eagles franchise rushing record in 12 games for a single season and remains on pace to break the all-time rushing record. Lamar Jackson is 14-1, Jared Goff 18-1, Patrick Mahomes 35-1. I don't think anyone else is above 0.5% to win the award. Do you think that Josh Allen's chances of winning MVP went up, down, neutral yesterday with the epic performance, but in a loss, coupled with a Chiefs win?
I mean, in the moment, I felt like, I can't wait to see how this is digested, because there tends to be an immediate reaction when you lose that is divorced from your performance as a player, as we saw with numerous examples over the years. But the fact that the key takeaway was 3 touchdowns on the ground, 3 through the air, and that there was a historic nature to his performance in the loss, albeit, some of if he doesn't get a rushing touchdown at the end from the goal line, which, by the way, why are you running the ball there? And you have to take a timeout. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, it felt mismanaged in the moment by McDermott, but forget about that for a second. You make history, you get your 3-3. First time in the Super Bowl era that's happened. Great. That's the key takeaway. And if he comes and goes to Motown and gets a win against an injured Detroit Lions defense, then it does feel over. But that is still a little bit of a 50-50 proposition. And the fact that he's firm to the degree that he has in this market, I think is a little bit aggressive. And, I'm going to end up with egg on my face for the NFL MVP this year, almost surely, because I have no Allen in pocket. And I think that, giving him this degree of credit when he is going to potentially be 3, at least 2, maybe 3 losses behind the Chiefs for the 1 seed is tough for me to really wrap my head around. If you are clearly the second best quarterback, team in your conference, as the Bills will be when the dust settles, and on the other side of the equation in the NFC, you have a player like Barkley who could be setting all-time records. This is a fragile situation for Allen backers, I think. I think the most likely winner at this point, if it's not Allen, is Barkley, and it's because of the potential for a record-breaking season.
Yep. I don't disagree with that. I think the thing with Allen is that I do think his chances to win went up materially yesterday, and it didn't feel like it at halftime when he wasn't having the historic performance and it looked like they were going to get run out of the building. But he cleaned up his numbers so much yesterday, and really over the past couple of games, where the knock on Allen was always that his numbers just don't stack up to Lamar Jackson, like, at all. And now they kind of do. Now Allen is first in EPA per play. He's first in QBR. His touchdown to interception ratio is super clean. Everyone wants to vote for him. And he doesn't have Derrick Henry in his backfield, which shouldn't really be that much of a knock on Lamar Jackson, but I think it is a small one if people want to justify not voting for him. But I think that with Allen, so now he has the numbers. He has a good enough seed. He's the likely 2 seed. So I think now if he just kind of plays a straight bat and goes 3-1 down the stretch and is a 2 seed at 13-4, and so long as and then he just needs to avoid like outliers like Saquon breaking the rushing record or Lamar going berserk and running the slate, I think he will win. What I would say though is that there's 2 things. One, I'm very high on the Bills, and I still make it plus 255 that they lose 2 of their last 4 games. So I just don't think he's going to win MVP if he loses 2 of the last 4, because they played Detroit, the Patriots twice, and the Jets. And so I think that his absolute best case for an MVP price really is like minus 255. And even then, I think that's too short for other reasons, but I just don't think he's going to win MVP. If he closes the season by losing, it will have been 3 of his last 5 games. At that point, I think it will burst on him. But the other thing too is like the sequencing hurts him a little bit, because if the Detroit game was in week 18, he might have already become too entrenched by then. But the fact that the Detroit game is now and he's coming off a loss, I do think that if he loses that game, I think he's definitely odds against to win MVP, because, and you got to think about what will have happened at the same time. Lamar Jackson plays the Giants, and Lamar Jackson will very likely light up the Giants. And then if Allen loses to Detroit, you're looking at a situation where, Josh Allen is 10-4, Lamar Jackson is 9-5, and Lamar has better numbers than Allen. And that's not to even mention what Saquon can potentially do. So I do think there is still a good chunk of uncertainty in the race. What I do think, though, is I think Allen has raised the bar so considerably that I think it's probably just too uphill for Goff and Mahomes to really factor in at this point, unless Mahomes goes absolutely berserk the last month. But I think you can pretty much put a line through Jared Goff at this stage.
Yeah, I am fine with that. And I think the Mahomes part of the equation is more of a, the team success of the Chiefs and him kind of basically just blocking to a degree for Barkley. and there's what realistically needs to happen for Allen to come back down to earth where I think he's closer to fair price is they lose the coin flip against Detroit.
Yep.
And I don't know that is ultimately going to be enough for Goff to supplant, kind of gain all of that equity and put it in his bucket. But it's certainly going to be enough to bring him back down to earth. And if Barkley has 150 yards rushing next week, which is entirely possible, he needs Barkley for what it's worth, kind of full. If you haven't already done the math, he needs 121 yards a game for the final 4 games on the ground to break the all-time single-season rushing record. I think even with 2,000 yards, he still has a chance, and that right now is very achievable. He can't have any stinkers, which is fragile, and he can't have any days off, which would help the Eagles' Super Bowl chances, obviously. But I do think the Eagles want this, and I think they're going to give him the opportunity to chase history and get the MVP. And I think if Mahomes has sitting there with 16 wins and Allen loses this game to the Lions in his 3 games back and has any hiccups against the Jets, which he could, he's capable of going out there and throwing 3 hits on a given day. Then all of a sudden this is completely wide open, which is why I think that it's a little bit more fragile than -500 suggests.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more fragile than -500, though. He certainly is the rightful favorite at this point. I think that it's not just that he has to lose to Detroit. I think he has to be not like superhuman again, because if he goes and balls out Detroit in a loss, then I don't think it really matters so long as he takes care of business
completely
in the last 3 games. But I think the bet to be made at price is Lamar at 14-1. I just think this has gotten a little bit out of control. Like Lamar, by my numbers, Lamar to run the slate is +223. And that very likely comes with winning the division. It comes with beating Pittsburgh in a couple of weeks to probably take control of the AFC North, presuming that Pittsburgh have lost to Philly this week. And then he gets an island game against the Texans the following week. So I think Lamar, whose numbers are still, in terms of just MVP compatibility, still are cleaner than Allen's. And if Lamar is able to run the slate, and Allen, even if Allen just takes one more loss, which, by the way, is very likely that Josh Allen will lose one of the last 4 games, I make it -319 that Allen takes another loss. And so if you're working in a world where it's Allen at 13-4 as a 2 seed, Lamar at 12-5 as a 3 seed, and Lamar has better numbers across the board, I think Lamar Jackson is super, super live to win in that situation. Now, maybe Lamar just blocks Allen and Barkley breaks the rushing record and wins there. But however you slice it, however you dice up the probabilities and the paths, I just can't get to Lamar Jackson being 14-1 to win MVP or close to that. And as much as people say that, people don't want to vote for the guy again, well, it's like, people don't often, you get a choice, clearly, but if the guy is the best case, he usually just wins. And I don't think anyone's really going to have a problem with Lamar Jackson, who's going to go down as one of the all-time greats, winning MVP in the year that he had the best case. So I think Lamar is much more live than the odds would indicate at the moment. Okay.
We agree.
All right, an NFC battle in the Pacific Northwest on Sunday night when Jordan Love and the Packers square off with Geno Smith and the Seahawks. Coverage of the matchup begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico, First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, let's close out with NBA MVP after another ridiculous performance. Nikola Jokic is now minus 120 to win his fourth MVP and put him in true historic areas. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is playing for a team that never loses, and he is plus 400. Giannis Antetokounmpo is plus 750. As the Bucks have somewhat righted the ship, Jayson Tatum, always the bronze medalist, or not even really the bronze medalist, not even that high up on the podium. He's plus 900. Luka Doncic is 11-1. I'm pretty sure that those are the only 5 guys who can realistically win MVP. Do you think there is a bet to be made in the market?
I think Luka 11-1 would be my swing here. And I think the answer is more about how these teams shake out at the end of the year and whether Jokic can realistically continue to play this many minutes and have this degree of usage and not get hurt and not have to at least take a breather at some point, because what he is doing right now is truly it's tough to put words to. This is a stretch of some of the most efficient and impossibly good offensive basketball that I've ever seen. You consistently eye test is just like, I'm like, what are we watching? Like, how is he doing this? Like, and then you go to look at the numbers thinking maybe that there's something in the numbers that'll tell you that this isn't that impressive, and they're just as impressive. And I look at how many minutes he played last year and the degree that took a toll on him by the end of the season. And I look at him going up this year in terms of what they're asking him to do to keep this team relevant. And it just doesn't feel as sustainable. I know he is an endurance athlete to his core. I know this guy had a playoff game where he played 50 minutes or something in 4 overtimes against the Trailblazers back in the day, got up on 1 day's rest and did it all again and was absolutely amazing. Like, we don't really know the limits of what what he can handle from a fatigue standpoint, but everything that I'm seeing in terms of how many minutes he's playing per game, how much usage he is getting, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, I just feel like this can't carry on. And even the fact that it hasn't come at the with the reward of compiling wins and margin in the West is, I think, also a problem. This team being 12-10 and 7th right now is an issue. On the other side of the ball, like a team like the Mavericks, where we know they finished last season as truly the best in the West as far as the numbers would tell you, and then they go on and win the conference and go to the finals, and then have effectively the same roster. If anything, they've gotten a little bit better, I think, with kind of knowing roles, responsibilities, and just progression and improvement from some of the young bigs. This looks to me like a Mavericks team that could threaten OKC for the 1 seed. If you have like a Doncic putting up the numbers he is, combined with a clear top 2 seed in the West, then all of a sudden path is a little bit more interesting for him because there is a whiff of, to go back to our Josh Allen conversation, like, it's his time. He has to get an MVP at some point, and 11-1 feels like a good buy point for him right now. Mostly, I can't say that I disagree at all with Jokic being minus 120. Like, fine. Like, I wouldn't, if I was if I was a bookmaker, I wouldn't be scrambling to write all the minus 120 Jokic's I could right now. Like, I would just be like, this is a fine price. Like, let's all take a deep breath.
Yeah, I mean, to put in context what Jokic is doing, he's arguably had I haven't looked at this, but I would argue he's probably had the greatest 19-game stretch to begin a season ever. I don't know how anyone could have been better. He's averaging 32, 14, and 10. He's shooting 51% from 3 on like 4.5 attempts per game. So it's not like it's completely fake volume. He's at 65% true shooting. The team is a plus 11 best in the league level when he's on the court. He has a plus 27 on-off net rating, which I know some people have problems with because it's like, Jokic, he shouldn't get a bump for the fact that his bench mob sucks. But at the same time, it kind of does speak to value that you provide to the team if you have to do everything by yourself. But yeah, it doesn't seem like this should be sustainable for a full season, particularly given that it did seem like he did wear down a little bit in the Minnesota series. Like he looked, and some of that was Malone stupidly playing in 47 minutes or whatever in game 7, but he did look a little bit tired, understandably, by the end of that series. So yeah, I would be a little bit doubtful that it's going to sustain for the entire season. The problem is, if you're taking shots at Jokic in this market, is that like he can drop down 10, 15% and still be the best player because he set such an incredibly high standard through these first 19 games. But yeah, there are worlds where it can go south. He can slow down. The Nuggets, I just don't think they're particularly good. And they could be, the Nuggets could absolutely just be a 44-38 play-in team. And that would be very interesting because I think that even at that point, if he's healthy and if he's remotely staying on the same pace, Jokic will be the most deserving MVP winner, but it's going to be hard for people to vote for him if he's on a 7 seed or an 8 seed. If it's like a 46-36 7 seed and he's still putting up these type of numbers, I think he'd just win anyway because it would just be so glaringly obvious that he's the most deserving. But there is downside for him. I agree with you. I think that Doncic at price is clearly the best bet. He's come back from the wrist injury and looked significantly better than he was before. He's cleaned up a lot of his numbers. His advanced stats have been surging since he came back. And to your point, I think this Mavs team is just a truck. I think they're clearly the second best team in the West after OKC. And I think that, yeah, they absolutely have scope to be. I think OKC is probably going to get the 1 seed, but Doncic has some path there. But even so, like Doncic could easily be a 58-24 2 seed and finish 13 wins ahead of Jokic and also have his own kind of absurd stat line. There's something about Shea, who I think on merit should be second at the moment, but there's just something about his stat profile that just doesn't resonate as much, I think, with voters, where a lot of Shea's value is defense, which you can't see as vividly, perhaps, and also the fact that he just never turns the ball over, which doesn't get as much credit as it should. It's like never turning the ball over in the NBA is like not taking sacks in the NFL, which voters just don't care about as much as they should, I think. So I think that dings Shea a little bit, that his case, the full value of it won't be as fully embraced as it will like Luka Doncic putting up 30, 10, 31, 10 and 9 or whatever he ends up with. Yeah. So I think the box score elements, like there's definitely worlds where Luka averages more points, rebounds, and assists than Shea, like he did last year. Yeah. I think it's kind of hard for people to get past that. So you add it all together. The way I price this market now, I did this earlier today. I had Jokic in the plus 120 range, fair, Shea and Luka both in the 4-1 range. And then Giannis after that in the 12-1 range, and then Tatum basically the rest of the market. And he's much longer. I had him longer than his market price. I just don't know what the path is really for Tatum to win MVP unless the Celtics win 66 games and he makes an insane amount of his pull up threes. So no interest for me on Tatum at price.
Yeah, I would agree on Tatum. At some point, Brown is going to become a little bit more of a focal part of the offense. At some point, Kristaps Porzingis is going to come back and soak up some usage. Tatum has been running hot, and the fact that he's not taken over as a meaningful favorite means it's probably not happening. Period. And I agree with you about Shea. Shea also has an eye test problem and a branding problem. Like he doesn't really seem to get the push to be kind of thought of as the best player in basketball, which is not fair. But and I also think I'm down on OKC relative to market right now in the absence of Holmgren, and I think Holmgren's farther away than people realize. But I could be wrong. And kind of last thought on this because you brought it up, and I think I liked your point, but I think you could have put a little finer, a little hit the nail on the head a little harder. A 7 seed Jokic is not winning this award, because the votes get cast before they do the play-in, which means there is a realistic chance that people they're going to be hesitant to say the MVP is on a team that does not make the playoffs.
Yeah. My pushback on that would be that in 2022, when the team won 48 games and was a 6 seed, the time that the last Bontemps poll came out, I think, where Jokic clocked Embiid, which was very surprising to me. I thought Embiid was going to win MVP that year, and then was left scrambling in a hotel room in Chicago to get a Jokic position, as it was clear that the voters were actually going to vote for the most deserving candidate and not just the best story. Jokic was like on the free, like dancing around the play-in at that point, and maybe the finality of actually being in the play-in will hurt. I think with that stuff, it's not just about the seed, which I think we learned a bit with Malik Monk getting so close to winning Sixth Man of the Year last year on a 9 seed. It's not just about the seed, it's about the win total. Like there's a difference between being a 42 and 47 seed and a 47 and 35 7 seed. And if Jokic is at 47 wins and he's going, and his biggest competition at that point is like Luka at 53 wins or something, like, I just don't think, even if he's a 7 seed, I think that people are probably smart enough now to be able to assign value to where the merit is. But yeah, I'm certainly open to the idea that Nikola Jokic in the play-in won't win MVP, but I think he's so good that he possibly could still. But yeah, anyway, it'll be a fun track. That's from a pricing perspective. That'll be the most interesting case. Is if there's Nuggets keep hovering around 500 and Jokic is still putting up this ridiculous 32, 14, 10, then it will get interesting down the stretch.
The most fun would be if they fall into like the 10th seed. Right. Yeah. If they're like if they're on the outside at some point.
What if he kills Jamal Murray on the court? Because that seems where this is headed. Because Jamal Murray, I don't know if you saw the clip of Jamal Murray refusing to go to the team huddle that Aaron Gordon was calling on the court. I think that's what was implied from the video that I saw that I believe Adam Mares put out. But yeah, not great vibes in Nuggets land at the moment. But having the best player on earth kind of can cure that. I think they should be. I think Jokic, if he stays healthy, he should be able to carry this team to 46, 47 wins. And I think that might be enough in the end. But we'll see. All right. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we'll see you soon.